G'day guys, you know those videos you watch on YouTube where blokes turn around and do engine conversions and they throw the key in the ignition and then they turn the ignition key and the engine starts? This is not one of those videos. But yeah, that's it. That's the last bit of, I suppose, Jeep part of the conversion is now gone. There's nothing really left of it. And that was, as I said before, that was one of the reasons why I did the Barra conversion, was just because Jeep parts here in Australia are getting old. There's no support like there is in the US. And yeah, so that's what I think of that. G'day guys, as you can see, the interior isn't exactly ideal. I've been taking my test drives with the shifter just sitting there, which is quite difficult to do. I've had issues with this. I've been putting this off for quite a while. Because of the height, I haven't been able to find a good mounting position that doesn't make this thing look as ugly as what it is, because this is a really ugly shifter. So I had an idea. This is a Ford Territory shifter, and the idea was to get a Falcon, and there's quite a significant difference in size. They're not, if I can sort of hold one up next to each other, you can see that the Falcon shifting mechanism loses this space under here. Now you can't just unbolt it because the actual linkage goes all the way down to the bottom, so it's not an easy mod. It's easier to just go get a Falcon shifter, which will then mean I can get rid of this and turn around and mount it a bit lower. That will allow me to sort of get it close to a position that was similar to how Jeep would have had their shifter, but of course this is a Ford Falcon shifter. Also need to try and fill in this space here, and my drive shaft is down there, which I can clearly see from here. That has to be filled in, so I'm going to try and utilize the original shield and incorporate the Falcon, I suppose it's also a shield, and make the two of them together to conform and form some sort of united mounting point. I don't know, that might work. That gets me the shifter here. Now the problem I can see is in park, this is where the shifter is. If I grab the top of the shifter like this, you can see my problem. Problem is I've got it back to front. Right, so there we go, that's in park. If I try and mount that into the original transmission tunnel hole there, in park, I'm hitting this, and that's pretty average. I don't really want to cut the hole any bigger, so I had an idea using the Falcon. It's hard. It's got a mounting. It's got a steel shield that sort of mounts onto here, and the idea was if I slightly slope that, it will bring my park back to somewhere here which is sort of normal. going on now? I'll tell you, I'm going to be so happy when this is all finished. I'm starting to get over it. So that will go there, and a shifter will go in behind it. So that's it. So now it's just going to be a matter of actually, I'm really digging that. I reckon that's going to work quite well. There's enough room at the back to allow for the cables and the wiring. It's just going to be a matter of modifying the Jeep's console so it can fit over the top and working from there. So yeah, I reckon that's going to work well. Bolt it down and we'll go from there. Cool. Alright, that's all nice and secure. So I'm going to hook up all the wiring and put the cable from that shifter onto this one, and then I'm going to cut a hole in my console and hopefully slide that over to disconnect everything from here, which is just a tab in the back. That pulls out, that's that one. Now here's the wiring, that's that. So now this shifter is no longer needed. You can see there's a significant difference between the height if I hold the two together. So that's certainly an improvement. Yeah, alright, we'll come back. So here's our new issue. So that was the wiring loom, or part of, that went into the Ford Territory shifter. And I'm really quite glad that I was lazy and didn't, when I was at the wreckers, just remove the plug. I decided to cut the plug off because it turns out that this plug here is actually quite different to the Territory. You can see them. If I can hold with one hand and do the camera with the other, you can see there's a difference in the plugs. Anyhow, so I'm going to have to cut my wiring loom. Now this is a wiring loom, standalone wiring loom that I've got from Bill Hooton. So if you guys need a wiring loom, then I recommend that you look Bill up on Facebook. Barra Looms and Conversions. You can find that Facebook group. There's a bunch of guys there that are very, very helpful, and he sells these standalone looms, which is what I'm using. And I'm going to cut this, solder it up, and then hopefully we'll get back into it. Now this is the actual Jeep globe that illuminated the center console, so I'm just going to turn around and wire it into this one here instead of trying to find which wire it comes out of on the plug. It's just easier, and then it goes there. Then when the lights are on overnight, hopefully it'll illuminate the position of what gear it's in, which apparently that's another roadworthy item. Don't know why, but anyhow, we're slowly getting there. The idea is that we're meant to be reducing all this mess, but I'm just making more work for myself, I think. But as you can see, the shifter is in there nice and strong. Alright, so I've wired it up, time to test it. Let's 3 headlights. Okay, cool, so our little globe's working. We're in park. Let's see if it starts. How come battery's flat, would you believe it? Alright. So off camera, I did a little bit of work to the center console. I absolutely butchered it. Save you guys all the effort of watching, but there we go. Look at that. It's sitting quite good now. I've made the start of a metal fascia that sits over the top. The original, you can see the outline from all the grime where the original Ford center console went over the top. We're going to do something else, but because I'm comfortable in fabricating in steel, I'm going to try and make it out of steel because I just enjoy making shit out of steel. So this is what I fabricated. Looks a little bit, look, just bear with me, it's going to look better once it's all done. I'm going to put a radius in here and try and make the transition a little bit more smoother through there, but essentially once it's all painted, I don't think it's going to look too bad. Obviously this will be trimmed off, so you're just going to have to keep watching to see what I've done. It's looking quite neat now. Well, I reckon it does. I'm pretty excited to see how everything looks. I had an idea with the shifter. I've got a spare actual shifter, so I've decided to paint that as well. It doesn't look too bad through here. And then I was just going to put a cover over this and then just clip that back into place down there. It's got no real purpose anymore, but that will sit in there like that. And to finish it off, I would put the shifter in there like that. I painted it all black. I'm not sure if I like it all black. Black or black and silver. Yeah, it doesn't look too bad either. I'm not sure. One of life's conundrums, isn't it? What colour to paint the shifter. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'll bring the camera in closer so that you guys can see what it looks like from here. Need to tidy up this fascia a little bit more. I just gave it a quick coat of enamel. It's nothing fancy because I just didn't really want to invest any more time into painting it properly. The truth of it is I probably will just get this thing vinyl wrapped. I'll just fill in a couple of little imperfections and then just vinyl wrap it. That way, unlike paintwork, if you drop your keys on it or drop something on it, it's not going to scratch and chip away and show the primer underneath. So yeah, so I'll grab the camera, show you guys how it looks. Yeah, there you go. It's not too bad. I've seen worse. I actually like it. I think it's almost like a B&M shifter wannabe, but it certainly looks a lot better than a lot of the surrounds that I've seen out there. I'll jump around the other side and you can see it from a driver's perspective. Well, that's it from the driver's perspective, and if I don't mind blowing my own trumpet, I think that looks pretty good. It's certainly doing what it's meant to do, and it's all working how it's supposed to. The BDR or the Ford Falcon shifters, same as the Territory, they're cable driven down to the gearbox. They also have, for the Triptronic, they have a series of wires that need to be wired into the ECU. And as I said before, we've got our illumination, which that all works, so that's all now roadworthy, and it's no longer sitting around just in here and flopping around when we take it for a test drive. So I think it's a good compromise between using the factory gear and morphing it into the Jeep's console. Let me know what you think.
Smile on that face.
Come back from giving it a bit of a drive, trying to sort out this CV issue that we've got somewhere. There's something binding up somewhere, but yeah, I heard a bit of a noise, and the engine's not running right, and basically the retaining nut that goes on the front of the compressor wheel has decided to spit a dick and get chomped up by the turbo, and I don't know, it's up there and probably in the intercooler, and all the shards of shit has gone everywhere. So yeah, so that's the turbo. That's fucked. That thing lasted all of an hour, I think. I haven't even got an hour on it. I've only gone around the block twice. I've broken the drive shaft, and now I've got that fixed, and now I've broken the fucking turbo. So yeah, why so serious? I think fucking I've just given Murphy the biggest kick in the balls that I could possibly give. So I'm not sure if it's the pinion angle that's changing under load, and then because the pinion angle is changing, that it's binding up here, because we're getting the same issue even with the different bits and bobs installed. Pretty much once the motor's on load, it comes up on the boost, then I'm getting a really severe clicking noise like it's a CV joint on a front wheel drive car when they go around the corner, and you're getting that knock 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 noise. And that's exactly what we're getting when you drive the Jeep around normally very without too much load. It's fine, but as soon as the car hits boost, that's it. It's horrible. It's probably the worst sound that you'll hear. And yeah, I reckon that maybe previously the issue we had with the driveline was because it was all aged CV joints from a wreckers, but we're getting the same thing occurring at the moment with the new parts as well. So I'm a bit lost as to where the noise is coming from, or whether or not it's coming from the hubs, because the hubs are now positive drive because of the Ford Territory. The Ford Territory transfer case is passing 32% of its drive through the drive line there to the front. So maybe it's the hubs that are shitting themselves under the load. I don't know. I've put my foot into it to try and break it, but all I successfully did was break something else, not what I was trying to break. I think we've just caught it in time, to be honest. Yeah, we have. I can put this in the lathe and give this a bit of a lick up. You can, oh yeah, there's a couple little marks in there. But I reckon the exhaust is where I'm hearing a majority of the noise. Look at that. Oh yeah. It's high flowing itself. Look at that. Oh God, look at that movement. Anyway, I don't honestly believe that even with that nut. Oh. I don't even think that even if I torque that nut up, I think the issue's in the bearings. I don't honestly. I think what's happened is the bearings have started to wear massively, and basically that's thrown the whole thing out of balance, and you probably ended up with a harmonic there that went through the shaft, and it's basically caused the nut to back off. I think that's more like that. Anyhow, let's get into it and see what else it's doing. Oh. This is like the gift that keeps on giving. Oh, you guys can't see this. This is really basically all these blades have been they're all been smoothed off. I'll see if I can give them a clean up, but basically they've been rubbing on the exhaust housing, and yeah, chomping away. Yum yum yum. That's interesting. Let me get some more light in there. And I'll turn the light on, the camera, see if that does a trick. Oh, there we go. Check it out. Look at that. Nice little fold. At least it's consistently folded. I mean, Chinese metal is probably one of the highest grades of steel that you can get, and it has a remarkable ability to reproduce the shape that you want over and over again, like it's done here. Fantastic. Well done, guys. I don't know. Oh, a little bit of inflate, just to, I don't know, let's say all that. I don't know, I don't reckon this turbo was right to start with, to be honest. But let's see how the new core goes. Probably more annoyed in having to do all this shit myself, to be honest. But not so much doing it myself, it's just doing things twice or 3 times, you know. I was pretty happy with the fact that the car had no oil leaks prior to this, and you know what happens when you put something back together, it's always going to go back not the same way as what it did the first time. But yeah, we can't change that. So that's our old one. This is our new one. Look a little bit different. Certainly not as much inflators on this one, so don't know. But as I said, I've turned around and I've Loctited this. So hopefully that will stop that coming off. But then who knows, it might even have a Chinese thread pitch on it, so that might cause it to come off. I mean, none of these things are really built to a high standard. You know, there is a lot of expectation out there that they probably will last longer than they do. Some people, I think it's a bit of a hit and miss, to be quite honest. I think some people are lucky and they get a good turbo, and you know, they can turn around and say they've had no issues. I've had some Chinese turbos before and not had any issues, but unfortunately this isn't one of them. So anyway, let's get back to fixing it and get it back into the Jeep so we can then take it for a test drive. See if 6 pound on the compressor does anything. Let's try. I don't reckon it's a 6 pound actuator, to be honest. Oops. So I've discovered something with this, which I thought I'd show you guys. I'm just going to hook some air up to the actuator and look at it. That's it. That's as far as this thing goes. Now this is how the turbo came to me. It's probably my fault as well. I should have checked it before I bolted it on instead of making the assumption. But there you go. Look at that. So you're not going to get a lot of gas out of there, and I think that could be the issue with the overboosting, not so much the diameter of the hole in the turbo. I think it's more to do with the fact that I'm just not getting enough lift to get that exhaust gas out. It's just really, really pitiful. So I think there's two things we can do. We can either modify the arm to change the way that the arc works, but there is adjustment within this actuator rod. So I'm going to modify it and see if I can get a little bit of difference and get it to open up a little bit more, because I think that would be probably a lot of our issue there, is that it's not so much that it's not opening at 6 pound a boost. It just can't get that gas flow through that small amount of lift. So I'm going to have a play with it, and then we'll come with the turbo, and then we're going to come back and see if it's made an improvement or not. Okay, so I've adjusted the rod, and I'm going to put some air into it before the compressor kicks in and see how much of an improvement we've made with this. That's a lot better. Yeah. I could do that all day. I think I will. Nah, anyway, I reckon that's the issue, so I'm going to leave it as such, and we're going to see how it goes from here. Yeah, that's stuffed. So I haven't even gone for a test drive. It hasn't even lasted their supposed bedding in period. So they said for 20 minutes, run it at idle, and the bearing's already shagged. And all this pipe work is factory pipe work, and I have no problems with oil supply to the turbo. It's just the quality of this stuff is just, it's just rubbish, absolute utter rubbish. We've ordered another turbo, which we've got, which is a genuine ball bearing turbo. So we got no Chinese stuff this time. We're all genuine Ford. Then we turned around and we had an issue. The issue was the motor was overfueling and it was breaking down. And I've got to thank Bill Hooton for coming around, and he spent quite a few hours going over everything, scratching our heads. Then we traced a few wires to find out that the map sensor wires, 2 of them were feeding in the wrong pin or the wrong allocation. So when he plugged his laptop in there, we could see that the map sensor wasn't working correctly, and that was where our fueling issues were coming from. A bit of research found out that the brand new spark plugs that I installed at the same time I changed the 1000cc injectors, which were recommended to me, were the issue all along. So the spark plugs were causing the engine to break down at about 2,500 RPM. As soon as I went to Ford, bought some original FG turbo iridium plugs. That's it. We no longer have that issue with the motor breaking down. So now we're getting on to the dash, and that's where today's episode is. So let's get into it. So what I've decided to do is while I'm trying to get all the gauges to work, I'm going to try and install a few of the sensors that were originally fitted to the diesel that I've removed earlier on. And hopefully I can reinstate the oil pressure gauge, the temperature gauge, volt, and obviously fuel, because they're sort of like the essential things that you need. The Barra is fitted with a switch which basically just tells you low oil pressure. If I can utilize the Jeep sender and get it to communicate with the Jeep ECU that I'm wiring in, then hopefully I have a dash cluster that has everything that I really need except for RPM and speed, which we can get around with a GPS or some other method. But for the time being, I've got all the wiring, so I'll show you that, and yeah, hopefully we can get something to work. So you've seen all the wiring. I think I can pretty much just get rid of quite a lot of that. There is a lot of surface wires that I don't need. There's the switch that I was talking about. I've just basically so that's the sender. It's got 3 wires. One of the things I've noticed with the Jeep is through the ECU there's a common wire which is brown and yellow. So every sensor that is essentially installed on the diesel had a brown and yellow like an earth wire, and that's something that I'd pretty much cut out of this wiring loom. So the next thing to do is to try and reinstate all that. And yeah, I'm not too fussed if I can't get temperature, because there are dashes out there that plug into the OBD port and they can read through the Barra ECU of what the temperature is. So if I can get oil pressure, that'll be brilliant, because this is essentially a FG top end running on a BA XR6 turbo flashed ECU. Well, it's a Ford Territory flashed ECU with an XR6 tune into it. So it's looking for a few of the sensors, but one of the sensors, because it's not actually a genuine turbo ECU, it doesn't have any outputs or inputs for a reference to oil pressure. So I can't really, even if I did tap into an OBD port, I cannot actually read the oil pressure because there's no wiring or sensors, and the ECU doesn't have the ability to read it for the minute. So I'm going to keep slogging away at it, and then hopefully you'll see me with a dash that works. Okay guys, so now what I've done is I've basically traced each wire that I need. I'm now using the Jeep's temp sender in the radiator. I've put the oil sender and replaced the switch for the Barra. What else have I done? Found the wire to the fuel tank, and I've now found the wire to the volt. So the PCM is now talking to the dash, and everything is working how it should be. I'll just quickly show you what's going on. Alright, so it's pretty messy in here, but you get the idea. We turn the ignition on, fuel tank showing correct volume of fuel, we've got volts, here we've got temperature, and we've got oil. So if I start it, oh, I forgot to hook up a wire. Hang on. Alright, let's have a second crack at it. Just forgot to hook up the ECU wire. There's our oil pressure. Obviously you're not going to see temperature because I haven't got that hooked up yet, but everything's working. So I'm going to turn it off because it's quite noisy. And yeah, so I've tested the sender. This is the original diesel Jeep Cherokee sender, and I've tested that in a cup of water, and as you saw on the dash, it works. So now I'm going to install it permanently into the radiator. So unfortunately the sender has a bush, so they're two pieces. That's the sender. I was just going to use a brand new sender, but yeah, $82 for that. I didn't really see why I needed to when I've got the old ones that worked fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new bush in the lathe, one that's going to suit the radiator that we have in there, currently in there, and that can go back into the cylinder head on the old diesel for the next owner to worry about. And I'm going to use this bloke here, put that into the radiator with my new bush, and then hopefully the ECU and the CAN bus and the dash and everything else like that will be hardwired in permanently, and we'll have all the features in the dash that we need, except for tacho and speedo, which I will address soon. It's going to get really grainy in here because it's getting quite dark as it's going to rain, and that's nothing I can do. But anyway, that's our sensor in there for our coolant. That's a Jeep Cherokee sensor, and I've taken the front off to run my wiring. I'm not a wiring guy, so this is about as neat as it's going to get. The ECU for the Jeep is now in place. I've tidied up all the rest of the wiring, and it's now time to start it up. Put it in park. Still got the annoying alarm. Alright, something's going. There we go. So we've got volts. I've also got something going. Windscreen wiper going. Where the hell's that? Shit. And it, I don't even know that thing worked. Oh, works now. Start it up. Oil pressure, volts, fuel, everything else. Okay guys, so now we've got a gauge cluster that works. We've got oil pressure, which is important. We know that we've got pressure to the turbo. We also know we've got oil pressure to the rest of the motor. We've got volts, which is good, I suppose. And now we've also got fuel, which is pretty important because we need to know when to fill up with our fuel. The bonus is we've also got temp. But now the temperature is not going to be that accurate because it's measuring it at the radiator. It's not measuring it at the engine. So obviously with the circulation, with the thermostat being in place between the two, there's going to be a difference in temperature drop. But that isn't an issue. So I was looking at getting a OBD port reader and basically having a digital display prior to me fixing the dash. Now, the company that I was going to use, since the Barras are now very, very popular, have decided to jack their prices up by a good $150 for that dash. So I've decided to try another one that was recommended to me from another person on the forum. And that's this little guy here. It's done by Revolution X. And we're going to turn around and install this. Now, it's quite small, so it's not going to take up a lot of space. It's really quite cute, but it's going to just have a tacho in there. It also reads volts. It basically reads all the vitals that the Barra is going to give it. It will work on any car, so there's no reason why it won't work on this car. But there is one thing that I have noticed, and that is there's a difference in wiring between a turbo ECU and a standard Falcon ECU. Now, with the turbo ECU, there are other inputs that are used to control boost. And this little guy here needs that input. So, for example, if we were using an FG ECU and wiring loom, then we would be able to read all the information like oil pressure, boost pressure and everything else like that internally through the ECU. But because we've got a Ford Territory ECU that has been flashed with the turbo tune on it, a lot of that information will be missing, which doesn't matter because we've got an analog boost gauge. We've now got all the oil pressure gauges that worked on the Jeep installed. So we've got everything else there to support it. And this little guy here can be calibrated to show speed, which is important. Failing that, then we've got a GPS, but we have a tacho. So I'm going to throw that in and we're going to see what it looks like. And yeah, hopefully that solves all our dash problems. So it's quite a nifty little setup. Just hit this button here and we can change all the settings. For example, the speedo, go to system setup. Speed adjust 106%, so we can actually adjust that. Same thing with the RPM. Volt's fine, and you can scroll up. Dimmer, day, night, time, fuel type. There's a heap of features. I just need to read what they all do to fully understand them. It's very basic. It will only work with the amount of inputs that it can actually be supplied with. So if you're going to put one in and just use it for the tacho and other basic means, then yes, it would be fine. If it was hooked up to a proper turbo, like an NFG XR6 turbo or one of the earlier BR XA6 turbos that had an ECU that was a proper turbo ECU with proper wiring loom that had all the extra inputs like oil pressure and everything else like that, I'm sure it would display that adequately. As far as if you've just got a Falcon or a Territory ECU that's just been flashed, the inputs are going to be limited to what you see here. So it's just pretty much going to be temperature, which, speaking of which, you can see the difference between the gauge that I've got in the dash to the actual temperature of the motor itself. That's because of, obviously, the radiator is going to be running a little bit cooler than what the actual headed is due to the circulation through the thermostat. And RPM, volts, clock, speed, once again, as I said, it depends on the inputs. So the limited inputs that you have, I suppose the limited amount of information you're going to get from that. But for bang for buck, you can't complain compared to the others. It's probably 1/6 of the price of other competing sort of setups. So that's it. This is the final part of our series of how to put a Barra into an XJ Jeep Cherokee. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you have any comments, please post them below. And till next time, till I find another project, this is me, Anthony, saying goodbye and thank you all for watching. Bye.